Welcome, Trevor, to Metalarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you again. Well, the first time we spoke about French and Horde, now we spoke about a little about Abhoria, and obviously from this new album, Deeps, and more things related to the metal world. So we can start by asking, how was the band during the last 2 years? Because the first album, or self-titled album, was released in 2022. Now we have the second one.
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of change. We have a new vocalist, so original vocalist left about a year after the album came out. So now we have Ben Pitts. He's a great guy. He's been in a bunch of different bands, Night Wraith, in the Company of Serpents. He came in, did an amazing job on this record with the vocals, just killed it. We actually recorded this album, gosh, about 3 months after the first record came out, because that one had been sitting around for a while because of, right, COVID delays happened everywhere. Um, so we were, kind of riding the high of the first album coming out, and I think this one, it's definitely an evolution. I think it's a little more focused than the last record. I'm very happy with it. And now we have a second guitar player. We've actually gone out. We did some shows this summer, and we're hitting the road in March and doing a proper tour as well.
Okay, nice to hear. Nice to hear that. So, well, as we mentioned before the start of this interview, well, we spoke about Ashen Order. Now I'm speaking about Abhoria. And one thing that I noted in both projects is that you lean down to the black metal because Ashen Horde is more black metal, and now
Mhm.
Abhoria is black metal in the vein from the Scandinavian bands. So, for you, what is the most interesting thing that you can find in the black metal from Scandinavia?
Funny. Yeah, it's a great question. I remember when I first got into the black metal thing, when I discovered it back in the late 90s, I had first gotten into death metal. I loved all that stuff, Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel and everything. And I loved it. I loved the aggression, but black metal added, it kind of took the speed and the intensity, but it also allowed for a lot more melodic passages and dissonant chords. I love just like weird voivod-esque dissonant chords, and black metal seemed to be kind of, it had all the death metal stuff plus that. So I really gravitated towards it. And I think that's just when I write music, that's what I write. I tend to also bring in some death metal elements, thrash elements, everything else I like. But at the core, I feel like black metal is just the thing that when I'm writing music, that's what appeals to me as both a writer and a listener.
Okay, nice. So you mentioned about a little change about this new album, these new depths compared to the Abhoria, one of Abhoria from the first album. So for me, it's very easy because I remember when I hear Abhoria has elements for the Scandinavian scene, but in some way you present an like level a little details that the personality on the album. With your depths, is
Mhm.
that personality is nothing more, but you straight away, well, you are going to stray ahead with a black metal stuff like the 90s, more density, more aggression on this new one compared to Aboria. Obviously, you using the elements for the technicality like this and this kind of aspect. So for you, this is my point
Right.
of view as a reviewer. But perhaps for you, you encounter or you did other kind of things. So for that, which change that you find in this new album, or what are the biggest change that you can find in this album compared to the previous one?
Sure. I think for me, the biggest thing about this album is I felt like I just had a better kind of grip on what Abhoria was. Like the first album, right? I was trying to just write songs that kind of took me back to all those bands I loved back in the 90s, whether it was Immortal or Emperor or Satyricon, whatever. I was not trying to copy them, but I was trying to like think back to what I liked about it so much and write songs that made me feel like that, which was cool. For this album, though, I felt like I was actually trying to write an Abhoria record. I wasn't so worried about did it sound like the stuff I liked? Did it pull from that? It was just, this is what I want it to sound like. And so that's why I feel like this one's a little more focused and a little bit more Abhoria and less like derivative of some other bands, at least in my mind. Whether or not that comes across, I don't know. So, but that's how I kind of saw it. I also think it's a little bit more diverse. It's not just blast beats from end to end. Tried to mix in some other stuff there and just, make it a little bit more my own.
Okay, nice. Oh, one thing that is Aboria has since the beginning is the presence of great cover art maker. because the first one in the first album was Adam Borg for there's amazing cover art that he did for the first one, and now we have a legend in your cover art that is Dan Seagrave as the creator of the cover art. Who came the idea to create a cover art with these two amazing cover art makers?
Right. Yeah, we've been super fortunate. So I've always thought that like even though a good cover doesn't make up for a bad album, a good cover adds to an album. Like there's nothing like getting, something you're listening to it and you love it and you just stare at that cover and you can like you feel like you're in the album as you're listening to it and processing it. So for the first record, the Adam Burke recommendation came from Kunal Choksi, who owns Transcending Obscurity Records, who Ashenhorde works with, and he was like, I asked him if he had any recommendations. He's like, Adam Burke's the guy to go to. And so we reached out and we worked with him, and he came back with that, beautiful painting and everything. And it was like exactly, I didn't know what I wanted, but it was exactly what I wanted. So when it came to doing the second album, I was kind of thinking about what I wanted, and I realized, Dan Seagrave painted like the absolute greatest album covers of the 90s, 2000s. Like I just remember staring at them all the time when I was getting into this music. And I was like, you know what? I don't know how many more albums we're into making. We might as well just go all out. And I was like, I'm going to hit him up. I'm going to see what can happen. And he was super nice, super easy to work with. He was excited about it. And I just kind of described what the album was about. And he came out with the album cover. And I was like, yep, that's exactly perfect. Exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, well, amazing, amazing. And perhaps, oh, for this kind of one, like this is like the supposed question, and for that, obviously, is I think it's too soon to see who will be the next cover art maker of the Hero album. But who knows? Perhaps with this fascination to have legends like Adam Bark, now one of the Seagrave, perhaps you will embark with a new, perhaps you will Illyrian Cantor for the next one, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So I won't give any of the details now, but the next album is mostly written. We have the concept, everything there. So I'm already starting to think about like who's going to be the perfect artist for this. So yeah, I'm going to start looking around for different artists and see if, find someone that has what I think is going to be the perfect style for this one. But it'll be
Okay.
good. I can promise that.
Okay, you mentioned into the second one, in the second answer question, in the second answer, as that you started hearing kind of course more the stuff from the 90s or the 80s of the end of the 80s, but then you decide to when you said to lean down to the black metal or with your bold bands. That's interesting. But as I mentioned, and I remember ask you in Ashen Horde about your collection behind you, this kind of stuff. Which record for you enters to this? Which record on the black metal stuff in the mid 90s and lean down completely to the black metal? Which record for you was the most amazing record that you hear at that time and say, hey, I will do black metal for my entire life?
Right. It's a great question. Yeah. Um, so the funny thing is, my answer, I think some people argue it's not black metal, especially because of the lyrics, but for me, it was Enslaved's Frost album. That was the record. I had started listening to black metal and stuff, but when I heard Frost, everything changed. That was it. I was like, this is it. This is the record. This is the sound. This is what I want to do. So that was the one for me. And I think, musically at that time, it's right in line with what a lot of those bands were doing, even if the lyrics were a little different. But yeah, so Frost was my record.
Amazing one. That album is really amazing from Enslaved.
It's
Okay.
perfect. And I was so fortunate a couple of years ago they've done shows all over but they played in Philadelphia at the Decibel Fest where they played Frost, the entire album. And I was so lucky to go out there and see it and it was amazing.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. Oh, nice, 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 nice. Other detail about the one, as I mentioned, we are talking about these other kind of things, and relating to this one, according to the scholar people, or perhaps the professionals talking about the black metal, according to them, start with Venom, with King Diamond, Lizzie Borden, all these kind of bands that at the 80s speak the 80s just spoke of the Satanist, nothing
Right.
else. No, that's nothing else because their music is nothing compared with Mayhem or other kind of bands that appears in the 90s. But for me,
Right.
and I think for all grouping metal, we think that the first wave of the black metal appears in the 90s, no 80s, no
Mhm.
70s, no 60s. But for you, you as a black metal fan, for you, in which point starts the black metal for you? It was from the as the scholars people says that is Venom, these kind of bands, or perhaps you start with perhaps with Mayhem, or perhaps Sarcophago from Brazil. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm aligned with you guys. And it's not to say that I love Merciful Fate, I love King Diamond. All that stuff is great. But yeah, to me, and I'm sure people could argue it, to me, black metal is more about the music
Mm-hmm.
mixed with the lyrics than just the lyrics. So yeah, they had the lyrical thing, sort of. I mean, Venom did it in kind of like a almost a jokey way. It wasn't as serious, right?
Yeah.
It was the evil imagery, but they didn't take it that seriously. So I think what they did definitely kind of planted the seed for the 90s black metal bands, Bathory and all these guys. They saw that and they're like, okay, let's take that and let's like push it to the next limit or way more beyond the limit. But for me, yeah, when I think about black metal, I don't think about Venom. I don't think about Merciful Fate. I don't think about Kingdom. I don't think about any of that stuff. To me, it's like you said, and I even think about the first Mayhem record. I don't think Death Crush sounds like a black metal record. I
Yeah.
think it wasn't until a little bit later when that shapes kind of the sounds shaped. So like if you listen to those first Immortal demos, um, they don't sound like black metal. They're death metal. And then they kind of found their sound with Diabolical and Pure Holocaust and everything. So yeah, I feel like to me the 90s is when what became black metal as we know it really came to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that is true. That is true. Well, for me too, because I think for the 80s, the only band who played for me black metal was Sarcophago with a little stuff with
Sure.
Sarcophago Brazil, and just Battery with their album. I can't remember the name right now. There is well,
Apparently Brazil, man, they were at the forefront of everything. They were doing black metal. You had Sepultura doing thrash metal that was way more extreme than what was happening in the US. Like Brazil just, man, they were creating all sorts of these really extreme genres.
yeah, that's correct. But I can remember the name from the Under the Sign of the Black Mark. That's the name. That's for me.
Oh, yes,
That's the album that starts the black metal in Europe for me. For me.
right. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm talking about now, and especially for this new album. Well, as I asked you this question in Ancient Horde, but perhaps you had a different one. But the black metal stuff, we with the black metal music, we usually the fans are not like the death metal or thrash metal. The fans things like with the all black metal has to be an ideology or perhaps more things. It's not like the it's more like the I'm a blacker. I'm just think I'm Satan. I think in just in culture this kind of
Right.
stuff. That's the thing. But for you, oh, why? Oh, but for you, I see in your lyrics that you spoke for other kind of things, more darkness in general than Satanism, this kind of aspect. So for you, which is
Right.
why always the black metal stuff are related with the Satanism? Are you agree that all are you agree with the mostly of bands that I interview? I remember I talked with the Magus from Necromante, and he told me that the black metal needs to be Satanist. I spoke
Right.
with Nicholas from Shining, and he told me the same. He told me the same. The
Hmm.
black metal need to be Satanist. Also, I spoke with them. I spoke with Demonas from Immortal and said the same. The black metal needs to be Satanist. It's not be
Right.
Satanist. It's not black metal.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I know there's people on either side of the fence, and that's fine. I mean, for me, that's just, I guess the way I think about it, it's just not a part of my life. I just don't really care. The whole religious thing doesn't really, it's just not something that I deal with, right? It's just not part of my life. So, were I to write lyrics like that, it would be very fake for me. I would be doing it just because that was the style. So, yeah, you could say, well, okay, then if it's not that, you're not writing black metal, right? It can be the same argument you make for Frost. You could be like, well, Enslaved weren't writing satanic lyrics, so they're not black metal. Okay, fine. So I guess you could say that. I don't know what I would call it, but to me, I guess, it's kind of funny too. Lyrics for me, I like good lyrics, but that's never been the main motivator. It's always been about the music first. And so that's what appealed to me. And so, yeah, I, you know, so I've heard both sides. I think Satir actually said, it can be black metal as long as it's dark. And I guess I'll cling to that because that's how I feel like our lyrics are certainly very dark. They're not uplifting. They're about dark themes. They just don't happen to have that religious element to them. But, you know, let
Okay.
people decide what they, you know.
Okay, one thing that well, I remember when talking about the promotion from this album, you told me about the at the beginning of the interview that you will promote this album in March with more shows, perhaps the first shows with the band and this kind of details. But now, well, talking about the promotion, what kind of plans do you have for these new deeps? Perhaps or depths. Perhaps you will embark on tours in US, or perhaps you are proposed already from Europe. Who knows?
I would love to play Europe. It has been my dream for 20 years to be able to play some of the big festivals, Wacken, whatever. I know we're not big, but like Europe really knocks it out with the festivals all summer long. So if we can get to a point where we can do that, that would be the dream. So yeah, for now, we're just gonna do some US dates. We're planning like a 2-week tour in March. I think 8 or 9 shows, mostly on the West Coast of the United States, since that's kind of where we are. But that's just the first thing. Then we're kind of gonna see what happens after that. But yeah, if we can find a way to get overseas and do some of those, not just the festivals, we'll also do some local shows. I think that would be amazing. I feel like European fans really go crazy for this kind of music. The US, they like it too, but it's really spread out and it can be a little bit harder to get to the right fans. So I feel like yeah, would love to make that happen.
Hmm. Okay, okay. Well, talking about other kind of aspects, as a musician, I divide this question in two because as a musician, you are a musician. You are creating you are creating music. You are still get better and better to do new records because that's the way. When you compose your first album and when you record your first album, you're young in many ways to create and compose. But then when you create more albums, you get better and better because that's the way. When you rehearsal
Right.
more, you are getting better musician. But the fans thinks differently. But why you say that? Because some fans,
Sure.
the fans prefers to love the rawness of the first album, of the second album. Even I think I
Mhm.
fans thinks about the demo era of the band, the lovely the demo, and this kind of so. For this situation, for you, which do you think that the well, as a fan too, do you think hello? Do you frozen?
Yep.
You are
Can you hear me?
frozen.
Nope. Can you hear me?
Uh,
Sorry.
I'm frozen. Now, so yeah, the connection was frozen. Okay, we'll start
Can
in.
you see me
We'll
now?
start. Okay,
Okay.
okay. So relating the question. So the fans thinks differently because they prefer the rawness from the first albums for the favorite bands. And for this aspect, so do you think or what are you think about now when you are better musician than 10 years or 15 years ago? And at the same time you lose the essence from that rawness
Right.
that you have on the first album. And also as the fan, as you can see, we talk about the Frost album from Slave. At that time they are more raw, but now if we compare the
Mhm.
last album, they are more technique or progressive. They are better musicians.
Right. Yeah, it's a great question, and it's funny because I've thought about that too, right? I'll listen to songs and demos I recorded when I first started in my earliest bands, and some stuff I'm like, oh, that's not very good. But then there's other things I hear, and I'm like, wow, that I would never write that today. It's weird or it's whatever or basic, and I'm like, I just wouldn't because I've grown past that. So but yeah, it's tough because, sometimes I do think the earliest stuff of bands is the best. And I don't know why that is, if it's just the fact that there's no expectations, right? No one's out there when you're making your first record. You're not thinking about how many copies you're going to sell, how many people are going to like it. You're just making the record you want to make. And I do think a lot of bands, as they progress, it becomes they still want to make music they appreciate, but it is, especially for bigger bands, they want to sell. They've got houses to pay for, they've got tours to do, all this kind of stuff. So that starts to taint it a little bit. I laugh sometimes because we don't really make any money off this, right? We do this because we love it. So in some regard, I don't feel like there's any reason for me to change because it doesn't really matter. It's like this isn't the reason I'm going to lose my apartment if no one buys the album. But yeah, to your point, you grow and you get better, and I think as a musician, that's just what happens. So whether it's better or worse, I don't know. That's hard to say. In some cases, I think like I know we keep going back to Enslaved, but they're a great example. I think the early stuff is great for what it is, but I think the new stuff is great in a totally different way. I think they write better songs now. I think they're technically more proficient. So, the other thing I think is like fans. This is kind of funny. I don't want to mean to fans, but because I do the same thing. Sometimes like, oh, I wish they would make an album like the first album. Why can't they do that again? Like I think about that a lot with Def Leppard, right? I think High and Dry is a phenomenal record, and I'm always like, why can't they make High and Dry again? But the reality is, if they did, that would be the ultimate fake because that's not who they are anymore. That's not the album they want to make anymore. So that's what I kind of laugh on the other side is like fans want them to bend these bands to make albums that wouldn't be true to them. I've heard Isan say that about a new Emperor record. He's like, I can't make an Emperor record. I'm not that person anymore. Devin
Mm,
Townsend about Strapping Young Lads said the same thing. So,
mm,
you know, and it's tough when you're a non-musician. You want the album that you love. But then, the other side, and I know I'm kind of rambling about this, is when a band decides, okay, we're going to go back and we are going to make a record like we used to. Like Metallica, for instance, right? They're like, all right, we're going to go back and we're going to make a thrash record. And everyone comes out and they're like, well, this just sounds like a bad copy of your first album. So it's like, even when they do it, they can't win. So I feel like all you can do is try to make albums that you believe in that are as good as they can be and just hope people get it.
okay. Okay, I'm talking about all other kind of things, especially in the metal. As you can see
Sure.
now, and especially of the black metal, because this is funny thing. I remember when the black metal appears in the 90s, as you, or perhaps all metal appears since the 70s, 80s, 90s. At that time, the metal was against something, against Christianity, against sociality, against politics. I love many things. That's way. I remember that I spoke with Tom from Sodom, and he told me the thrash metal is an essence from the 80s because we need to against something, and it's
Right.
economy against politics, this kind of stuff. That's the essence from the thrash metal, and the death metal thinks differently. They wants to write about something shocking because horror movies, blood, bodies, etc. And that's the way
Right.
that metal was created in the 80s and 90s. Then the black metal appears with the against the Christianity. We are all
Yep.
satanisms. This kind of someone. This is the second wave because obviously the black metal did say some kind of things with the culture at the
Sure.
mid 90s. So that's interesting at that time. But as you can see now, at that time at that time also, I remember when I walk on the street with my Cannibal Corpse t-shirts on the streets, and the people in front of you, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Or this is very. Please step away, or perhaps across the street to the in front of him, because the cover up from the Cannibal Corpse was too shock for them. But now the
Sure.
metal is more well accepted. Now you can walk with your bizarre t-shirt and nobody say nothing about you, obviously.
Right.
And also the black metal now is more some commercials of black metal for the
Mhm.
cough, black metal for the flu, this kind of
Right.
unique pills. That's a funny thing. That's more well, the metal now is more well accepted. It's not against anything now, because I think the essence will lose for this new movement to accept anything as the way created. So for
Mhm.
you, if the metal is now well more accepted right now, who, who what are you how are you think, or how do you manage the future of the metal when the metal is not need to be with against anything now, because we did everything in the past.
Right, we did it. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I know what you mean too. And I think back, I feel like a lot of it is age, right? Too. That's part of it. Like I think when you're younger, you're coming out, you're kind of fighting the world. You're fighting authority, you're fighting against your parents, you're fighting everything. So there's definitely that kind of youth energy, right? It was in punk music, it was in thrash, it was in black death metal, everything. And so there is something about getting older, and a lot of these bands got older, and I don't know, you just mellow out a bit. You're not quite as angry as you were at that point. So I think that's why it shifts a lot more to the art. But the other thing you mentioned about it becoming more acceptable is funny, because think about that. That's always been the case. You know, way back in the day, blues, jazz, Elvis was considered shocking to people, right? All these families would see him on TV and like, oh my God, what is this guy doing? And we look back now and we're like, how could anyone be offended by Elvis? Like, that's ridiculous. So I think that's just the natural way of things. It's like it comes out, it's new, it's different, it's shocking. And at some point, everyone just gets kind of used to it. And it's like, all right, right? It's the same. I don't know about you, but watching horror movies, things like that. When I was younger, they were shocking and oh my God, and oh, I'm gonna have horrible dreams, and this is gonna. Now, I watch horror movies with these things, and I'm just like, okay, nothing phases me anymore, right? You just become desensitized. So I think that's part of it. I think society just becomes sort of desensitized to the whole thing. Um, but at the same time, I think some of the things that people were rebelling against maybe don't have the same power they used to. Um, you know, I don't know. I'm just thinking like at that time, especially people, those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, religion was a really major part of a lot of everything, government and stuff. And it is to a degree, but at the same time, it's not in the same way. I feel like a lot of countries have kind of moved away from that. So it's almost like, well, then I guess we don't need to rebel against that anymore. So I think the question is like, what's the next big thing? What's the thing that is the younger kids today are mad about? What are they going to go right about? I don't know. It's interesting to see what that ends up being.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Well, Trevor, sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. As at the first time, you are a terrific guy. I really, I saw that your wall behind you grow up
And it's
more.
all four, all around me.
You grow, yeah, your big wall behind you are grew during in 1 year. That's amazing. So perhaps
Yeah.
add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metallica followers.
Yeah. Hey, well, first off, thanks to you for having me on again. Really happy to be back. I love being able to talk about metal and all this stuff, just things I love. To Latin American followers, another place I would love to get down there. I would love to play some shows. Maybe that can happen. Hopefully, by the record you like it, we'll get down there, because that would be absolutely amazing to play everywhere for all our friends. I got a good friend from Uruguay. Keeps talking about wanting to go down to Uruguay. So let's do it. Let's go to Latin America. Let's play some metal and have fun. That'd be awesome. So, but I appreciate everyone that's listened to the album. If you haven't, please check it out. If you like it, tell all your friends, and hopefully you can keep making them, because we love doing it.